Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
After the Cold War, socialism was collapsed in Central Asian countries. Then they introduced the market economy policy and tried to establish the country towards the democratization while facing a lot of difficulties. First of all, could you tell us about the biggest political problem by which these countries are confronted?
These countries are aiming at creating a feasible market economy and establishing a democratic political system. However, I think both are much slower than we hoped. But creating a democratic political system is not an easy task. I think the most important thing at this moment is to create a stable and accountable political system. I mean that the political system which can accommodate social and economic changes. And unless that the system can contain the new changes which occur in various strata of society, it will not be stable. But also that economic development is necessary to create an economic situation where the people feel the identity with that. They feel this is our system, our society, so that we have to defend. So the democracy is a nice word, but I think creating democracy is a much, much harder task. And this creating new system which accommodate and absorb people's voices, that's the most important task. However, there's one difficulty, that is high expectation. Both the people in these countries as well as the international society expect a lot. And we talk about democratization in 10 years and we say, oh, it has not been functioning well. But creating a democratic society takes not just 10 years, 20, 30, I'm not sure how long, but both people expect a better life, better political situation in a quick time. I think that also create discontent and become a problem.
In Central Asian countries, how will national consciousness and Islam take part in the process of establishing a new country? Please explain to us with an easy example.
After the end of socialism, in general terms, there are two important resources in these countries. If we consider culture as cultural resources which both people and the government can mobilize, one, national culture, two, Islam. So how to mobilize these two important elements is very important. Now, we may say that there's roughly speaking, one way is nationalism, to mobilize both national culture and Islam alongside nationalistic ideas. So in that case, Islam becomes a part of national culture. It's religion, but not independent. But there are also tendency to think that Islamize everything. So from Islamist point of view, Islam is superior, but also it has interrelated with national culture. And they also have very strong national elements. So I think now that these two tendencies are trying to mobilize these resources for different directions, and for example, but that's not very easy. And it's not easy to separate two and say, okay, we depend on national culture and Islam is the important element in national culture, but we don't like too much religious element in it. That's not easy. For example, Kazakhstan is very proud of Farabi. Farabi is one of the greatest Islamic philosophers of all ages, and he came from a town called Farab. So I think it's nice to be proud of Farabi as one of their ancestral great figures. However, the Farabi himself was a great Islamic thinker, had nothing national in his ideas. So if we emphasize Farabi's ethnic origin, then you go to the universal Islam too. So if one says that Islam is part of national culture, okay, that's nice. And I think nobody can build a good society there excluding Islamic element, because that's part of national culture. But then how to control these? And can they really control? Islam is something controllable? That's, I think, difficult part of this story.
The kidnapping case of 4 Japanese and a Kyrgyz interpreter, which caused by the Islamic movement, was solved in peace. Could you please explain about the actual circumstances of the Islamic movement in Central Asian countries?
First of all, I like to say that Islam has 2 important elements within it. One is the tendency to establish Islamic society and mobilize all forces to defend it. So this is very defensive in some cases. But once an Islamic society is established, strong tendency to create good citizens. Those who try to establish and develop the society and make their life better. Now, sometimes we see that the first element is stronger and sometimes second element is stronger. Now, Central Asian country after the end of the Soviet era seem to have a lot of the first element, because it's understandable to see that after long years of suppression of Islam by Soviet authorities, now they try to revive itself. It's not easy to establish one's new identity. Now, if we see the general survey of the Islamic scene in these countries, there are various elements, forces. One is general Islamic awakening, the building new mosques. During Soviet era, there are very few mosques remain there. But now the mushrooming of new mosques and renovation of old mosques. Also, there's what we call revitalization of tradition. For example, that Sufi tariqas, mystical orders, they were there under the water. Now they are reviving. For example, Naqshbandi order is very active. But also there's a new movement, new revival movement based on new ideas. And here we see that a gap between older generation and new generations. New generations are very fervent. They bring new ideas. They try to bring new interpretation of Islam to fit the new realities of these societies. Among these, both older and new generations, there are the moderate peoples. There are also radicals. Radicals not necessarily militant, but those who try to think radically about these things. They try to create new kind of solutions, new kind of Islamic interpretations. Now, there are also what we may call the official Islam. Usually that the Islamic country has a good number of Islamic scholars and the institutional Islam, where that they cooperate with the government. However, that these institutional Islamic official Islam in Central Asia has been weak relatively, and that's of course because of that the suppression of Islam in general in Soviet eras. Now, this official Islam itself is reviving, and but also they are still weak. So, if government try to promote this line of official Islam, and so that the moderate will grow, it's not easy. They are not strong enough to counterbalance new type of Islamic movement. And I think that's general views, and each country has the different synthesis of these forces. But in general, I think that the Islamic revival is becoming stronger.
To keep a political and social stability in Central Asian countries, the economic development is the most important issue. However, the coexistence with Islam and how to position Islam while establishing the country are also important. Would you please tell us your opinion? What is the ideal coexistence with Islam?
As I explained, that Islam has 2 tendencies or two elements. One is defending or establishing Islamic society. The other is making good citizens. So the coexistence of Islam with Islam is not, theoretically speaking, difficult. However, how policymakers approach these questions sometimes affect its result in a very serious manner. The one thing is clear. In these countries, Islam constitutes a very important part of national and historical heritage. So it's, I think, almost impossible to alienate Islamic element from the course of building a new society. However, in order to have a sound, stable Islamic society or Islamic movement, there must be some democratic processes where the moderates can speak. That the radicals or militants may speak with guns, but the moderate people with ordinary social sense of balance, they can speak only in a democratic atmosphere. So there must be some democratic process where these moderates can develop themselves and create Islamic forces by arguing, discussing, advertising, not through guns. However, this also is a serious question the policymakers of these countries must tackle with, because moderate forces may become an alternative political option. I don't believe that the radicals can really take power. Usually that the people don't suppose that the radicals and extremists, but the moderate democratic Islamic forces can become an alternative for new government. So this, how to create a democratic process, but also become very determined to promote that. That's, I think, very important if that they are going to reconcile and coexistence with Islamic forces.
Finally, Professor Kosugi, Japan is different from Islamic world. In the future, how Japan should meet Islam in order to cooperate for the development of Central Asian countries? Could you tell us your opinion?
Certainly, Japan has been far away from the Islamic world, and the contact is relatively new, historically speaking. So the first thing Japan needs is to have a good knowledge of the Islamic world, and the Islamic world is vast. So we need to strive more seriously to understand the logic of Islamic world, cultural background, and social realities, economic problems. Now, given that the international status of Japan today, I think it's impossible to ignore the Islamic world, which constitutes 1/5 of the global society. And now, once Japan is committed to help these Islamic countries, the question of Islam is unavoidable. We can't escape from dealing with that. Now, but in general, if peoples in these countries decide to take Islam as their society or make society more Islamic, that's their free will to decide. But also Japan itself needs to decide our own position. Now, Islam is very different from Japan, and Japan is different from Islam. However, there's, I think, that the important element which we share. That is that Islamic way of making good citizens. The Islamic society also has very strong desire and idea to make society better and make people's life better and make citizens cooperate with the society. And Japan's help and for these countries aims to create better life and better society. So if these countries like to create a better society based on their own culture, which is Islam, I think Japan has no objection to that. And I'm sure that we can cooperate, and cooperation in this regard for Central Asian country, which is still struggling to establish new countries, I think we have to help them in a very serious manner.
Professor Kosugi, thank you very much.